Hi, it's Kerry here to show you how I made this double display Christmas card, and thank you very much to everybody who expressed an interest in finding out how that got put together. First off, I just would like to point out that the measurements I've used in this card are all in proportion to my main panel, which I cut with a die. I used a stitched rectangle frame die. Now this measures 8 centimeters wide by 10.5 centimeters long. So if you're wanting to use a stitched rectangle die of your own, chances are it's going to be a slightly different measurement. You would need to adjust the size of your the measurements of your base pieces of card behind it to allow for that. Or if you weren't worried about the stitched element of it, or you didn't want to have to fuss with changing dimensions, then you could just cut plain pieces of card that measure 8 by 10.5, and then you could use my measurements. So the things that I've used in putting this card together are the stamp sets from Stampin Up, Dashing Deer. I've used these two stamps here and these two sentiments. Gorgeous Grunge. Now I've used this one here, which is what I call just a splodge. I don't know the proper technical term for it. And Wonderland. I use these trees. This is a retired set, so if you wanted to use something current, you've got the pine tree from Lovely as a Tree, or probably something from the holiday catalogue. Dies. I've used the Detail Deer thinlits that match Dashing Deer. Some stitched hill dies that I had in my stash. If you don't have anything like this, you possibly have a curved die that you could use, or you could just draw something by hand on your card. And I've used some stitched rectangle dies. Ink pads. You need Versamark, Soft Suede and Night of Navy. You'll need a bone folder, pair of scissors, some adhesive, an embossing buddy and some white embossing powder, and a heat tool to melt that, and the cardstock. So for the base card, a piece of Night of Navy, and this measures 16 centimeters wide by 13.8 centimeters high. A piece of the thick Whisper White cardstock, which measures 19.6 centimeters wide and 12.4 centimeters high. A piece of scrap Whisper White for stamping the deer on. I've used my stitched rectangle die, which, as I said, measures 8 by 10.5. One in Night of Navy and 3 in Whisper White. And then you also need some soft suede, which will be the mat behind those panels, so they're slightly bigger than the rectangle. So I've cut mine 8.3 centimeters wide by 10.8 centimeters long. So to start with, I took one of my white stitched rectangles and I stamped a sentiment on it. So I began at this inside panel and stamped on the sentiment from Dashing Deer. So I have one of those all already prepared, so you don't have to sit and watch me stamping. And I'm going to deal with that next, and this inside base piece of card. So first of all, we need to score this. And as it measures 19.6 wide, and I need to score it in half, I'm going to score it at 9.8 centimeters. Make sure you get your cutting blade out of the way so you don't cut it in half by mistake. And while I'm here, I'll score my navy piece as well. So the navy piece here, 16 centimetres wide, I'm going to score that at 5.5 centimetres. Burnish with your bone folder. Take your white rectangle that you've stamped Happiest Christmas Wishes and just sit it in the middle of this right hand portion. Try and get it straight just by eye, and using your tree stamp and soft suede ink. Just going to stamp these trees a number of times. And then let's take that piece out and stamp again, and that will help fill in those gaps. Excuse me, I've gone croaky all of a sudden. That will help fill in the gaps that we had, so that will now be able to sit there. Oh, look at that, I've managed to line it up pretty well. I surprised myself. And then something like this, if you feel you want to, you can just fill it in with your soft suede pen marker. But I find a lot of it will be covered up with the matte. So with one of your soft suede matte pieces, add some adhesive. And then more snail on the back of that. And it can go in here. Yeah. This piece can now be adhered on the inside here, so that's going to sit in there. So adhesive on the back of that. And you're going to line it up to the fold and just make sure that you leave an even amount of space, top and bottom. Okay, so that's that piece done already. For the inside, oh sorry, the second front cover, I guess. Another one of the white stitched rectangles, and this time we're going to stamp the other sentiment from Dashing Deer. So I've got one here that I've prepared already. Oh, which I've just got a grubby mark on. I'll try and rub that off later. So for this one, we're going to add the hills and the deer. So what I did for the snow-covered hills part was, took my third white stitched rectangle and the Stitched Hills die that I wanted to use, and I just sat that there and ran that through the Big Shot, and then when it came out I turned it round the other way and I did another one at the other end, so that I end up with two pieces like this of Stitched Hills. The slightly smaller one I saved for the front panel, and then this one is going to be attached on here. So line that up perfectly with the edge, and of course then the stitching down the side will match up too. On the scrap piece of white, so I've stamped my deer ahead of time. I did 2 of the stags and 2 of the does, and they're stamped in soft suede, and then I cut those out with the matching die. Okay, so I have those here ready to go. So take one of the stags, take this one, and attach him. Now I like to do a little bit of shadow underneath. Just makes it look more realistic, like it's not floating in this white space in the middle of nowhere. So I use a Sahara Sand marker brush tip, and I just draw a little bit of a shadow ground. That can be attached to one of the soft suede mats. And that's ready to go on there. We don't put it on just yet, that will go on later. And then the last thing to work on is the panel for the front. So you need your stitched rectangle in Night of Navy. And as we're going to emboss on this, we'll first of all rub it with the embossing buddy. Just quickly clean my tree stamp. Make sure it's clean. Okay, so using Versamark, stamp the trees quite a good way up. I'll use most of the stamp. Stamping it twice. Oops, you might just do the third one and just get a little bit of edge in there on that bit of paper. Okay. And sprinkle with white embossing powder. Okay, make sure that you're happy with that, and then heat set that. Now I've got one prepared already because you don't need to listen to my noisy heat tool. So I've got that melted, and then to stamp the snow. So as I said, I've used this splodgy sort of stamp from Gorgeous Grunge, and again stamping with Versamark. And white embossing powder. And just check that you're happy with what you've got. Sometimes I just brush off the bigger splodges because I don't want too big a snowflake. But that looks good, I'm happy with that. So you would then heat set that as well. And again, I've got one prepared ahead of time. Now if you do like I did on this one and you get the end of the stamp there, don't worry about it, that's going to be covered up with our hill piece. So we can now attach our other piece of stitched hill. Again, line that up exactly at the bottom. And we're ready for our deer. So we've got one of the doe. And put that on first. And you'll see that my second deer is a little bit different. The reason for that is when I'd cut this out and I sat it there, I didn't like all the white around here that the die leaves on. And I knew that I'd never do a good job of cutting that out by hand myself. So I decided to turn it into the deer that doesn't have antlers. So if you just grab your paper snips and cut off the antlers. Right, that leaves you that, but now you've got a deer with only one ear. So what I did was I took my second one of these and I cut off the head, cut a little bit off the nose because it's a bit long, and I attached that behind there like that, line it up so that now I have a second ear. Just put a little bit of adhesive behind the deer's head there and attach that there. And then you have the second deer, sort of a perked up deer saying, "Oh, what's happening over there?" Santa's looking. Okay. And then attach excuse me, I'm just going to get rid of this grid paper because it's a bit messy with ink and embossing powder. Okay, so there we have that panel, and again I put in shadows underfoot with my Sahara sand marker. So it doesn't look like they're just floating in midair. Sort of helps ground them in. And that can now be attached to our Sahara sand mat. Okay, so this is going to sit here on the front. So I just sort of set it and line it up. And I'm looking for even space here, top and bottom. And I'm also looking for even space here and here on the white. Alright, so only this side is going to be attached, so I'm only going to put adhesive on that side. I'm going to do that. So I just sit and check to see if I could put more adhesive if it needs it. No, I think that'll be enough to hold it. Okay, so set it. Yeah, that's attached onto the front flap, and then this one is going to go in here. So what I do is put adhesive on the back. And hold it behind here, so make sure you've got it up the right way. Hold it behind here and align these two pieces. Remember, they're the same size. So you're just holding it firmly there so it's an exact match. And then you simply close that down and press. And there you have it. So that is complete. Front number 1, front number 2, and then the inside. I hope you have a lot of fun if you attempt one of these yourself. Bye.